Right, so I wasn't recording then. So, welcome to the secret key to Theosophy Study group.
That's easy for you to say.
Easy for me to say. Everybody, welcome.
Thank you.
So, if anybody's following this recording, we're on page 20, Theosophists and members of the TS. Let's have a few quiet minutes. I can use my Okay. Would you like to be the inquirer?
Yeah,
And I'll,
sure.
so, Theosophists and members of the TS.
This applies to lay members, as I understand. And what of those who pursue the esoteric study of theosophy? Are they the real theosophists?
Not necessarily, until they have proven themselves to be such. They have entered the inner group and pledged themselves to carry out, as strictly as they can, the rules of the occult body. This is a difficult undertaking, as the foremost rule of all is the entire renunciation of one's personality, i.e., a pledged member has to become a thorough altruist, never to think of himself, and to forget his own vanity and pride in the thought of the good of his fellow creatures, besides that of his fellow brothers in the esoteric circle. He has to live, if the esoteric instruction shall profit him, a life of abstinence in everything, of self-denial and strict morality, doing his duty by all men. A few real theosophists in the TS are among these members. This does not imply that outside of the TS and the inner circle there are no theosophists, for there are, and more than people know of. Certainly far more that are found among the lay members of the TS.
So what does the lay members mean?
It means just the ordinary members,
Okay.
not members who are pledged. What she's talking about here, as regards living those lives, are those who pledge themselves to follow the spiritual life.
Have we?
Yeah.
Have we?
Well, I don't know if that's up to...
No, I mean by joining the Theosophy.
Oh no, if you join the Theosophical Society, you're a lay member.
Right.
Then it's up to you whether you decide to go further. Because she mentions the esoteric group, which is a small group of her disciples that she had towards the end of her life, and they were pledged to live this theosophical life. But there's no one forced to live that life if they don't want to.
And is there a pledge these days? Do you know? Do people in the Theosophical Society
There is a
pledge themselves?
esoteric section which is more that people are pledged, to become vegetarians and to live an altruistic life if they can. Yeah, so there is a esoteric group. But the ordinary TS is just people who are studying the teachings and trying to understand the teachings, really.
Right.
Okay, next one.
Then what is the good of joining the so-called Theosophical Society in that case? Where is the incentive?
None, except the advantage of getting esoteric instructions, the genuine doctrines of the wisdom religion, and if the real programme is carried out, deriving much help from mutual aid and sympathy. Union is strength and harmony, and well-regulated simultaneous efforts produce wonders. This has been the secret of all associations and communities since mankind existed. So I always find that interesting that people say, oh, well, it's okay, just go on Zoom, and people prefer Zoom to actual live meetings. But what it says here is, it's being together, it's kind of social. I found that out when I went to the weekend.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much the lectures, it was being with people and having conversations, a bit of a laugh, and just socialising. That was, to me, more important than actually listening to the lectures.
Then you're within the heart range, aren't you?
Yeah. When you have a meeting, you build up a kind of spiritual energy as well, when you're all together, which you can't do as well on Zoom.
Gather together in my name.
Yeah. Where 3 or more are gathered together in my name, I will be there. So where is he?
It's everywhere.
Well, it's 3 or more. Carry on.
But why not? Why could not a man of well-balanced mind and signalness of purpose, one, say, of indomitable energy and perseverance, become an occultist and even adept if he works alone?
He may, but there are 10,000 chances against one that he will fail. For one reason out of many others, no books on occultism or theurgy exist in our day which give out the secrets of alchemy or medieval theosophy in plain language. All are symbolical or in parables, and as the key to these has been lost for ages in the West, how can a man learn the correct meaning of what he is reading and studying? Therein lies the greatest danger, one that leads to unconscious black magic, or the most helpless mediumship. He who has not such an initiate for a master had better leave the dangerous study alone. Look around you and observe. While 2/3 of civilised society ridicule the mere notion that there is anything in theosophy, occultism, spiritualism, or in the Kabbalah, the other third is composed of the most heterogeneous and opposite elements. Some believe in the mystical, and even in the supernatural, but each believes in his own way. Others will rush single-handed into the study of Kabbalah, mysticism, mesmerism, spiritualism, or some other form or another of mysticism. Result? No two men think alike. No two are agreed upon any fundamental occult principles, though many are those who claim for themselves the ultima thule of knowledge and would make outsiders believe that they are full-blown adepts. Not only is there no scientific and accurate knowledge of occultism accessible in the West, not even of true astrology, the only branch of occultism which, in its exoteric teachings, has definite laws and a definite system, but no one has any idea of what real occultism means. Some limit ancient wisdom to the Kabbalah and the Jewish Zohar, which each interprets in his own way according to the dead letter of the rabbinical methods. Others regard Swedenborg or Bohing as the ultimate expression of the highest wisdom. Others again see in mesmerism the greatest secret of ancient magic. One and all of those who put their theory into practice are rapidly drifting through ignorance into black magic. Happy are those who escape from it, as they have neither test nor criterion by which they can distinguish between the true and the false. And that's interesting.
What's the Thule?
I don't know. It's the ultimate something, ultimate.
Yeah.
The ultimate. Are those who claim to have the ultimate, that they've reached the ultimate of knowledge, really. I mean, you get them nowadays, don't you? They're professing to be adepts and at a New Age movement and what have you.
Well, they all say the shaman. I think if you say you're a shaman, you can basically say
Yeah.
you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And and she's saying that people just read things, and if they haven't got true guidance, they just interpret them in their own way, if their own brain mind. So three people might read the same book and all have different ideas what the book's about, and she talks about, earlier on she talks about, or isn't she, about theurgy, which is like doing magic, trying to evoke spirits, things like that, which is very dangerous if you haven't got the true guidance.
Yeah, and I think you'll get that through discussion and face-to-face discussion particularly.
I think a lot's changed since she wrote this, because when she wrote it there wasn't many books released on occultism or even on Buddhism, or apart from those written by intellectuals, Orientalists. But now a lot's changed, so there's a lot more information.
And I think with Crowley and people like that, people have a bad impression of occultism.
They do. People think occultism is something evil, which isn't. It just means science of the hidden. Hidden things.
Are we to understand that the inner group of the TS claims to learn what it does from real initiates or masters of esoteric wisdom?
Not directly. The personal presence of such masters is not required. Suffice it if they give instructions to some of those who have studied under their guidance for years and devoted their whole lives to their service. Then in turn these can give out the knowledge so imparted to others who had no such opportunity. A portion of the true sciences is better than a mass of undigested and misunderstood learning. An ounce of gold is worth a ton of dust. Well, that's quite true.
But how is one to know whether the ounce is real gold or only a counterfeit?
A tree is known by its fruit, a system by its results. When our opponents are able to prove to us that any solitary student of occultism throughout the ages has become a saintly adept, like Ammonius Saccas, or even a Plotinus, or a theurgist like Iamblichus, or achieved feats such as are claimed to have been done by Saint Germain, without any master to guide him, and all this without being a medium, a self-deluded psychic, or a charlatan, then we should confess ourselves mistaken. But till then, Theosophists prefer to follow the proven natural law of the tradition of the sacred science. There are mystics who have made great discoveries in chemistry and physical science, almost bordering on alchemy and occultism. Others who, by the sole aid of their genius, have rediscovered portions, if not the whole, of the lost alphabet of the mystery language, and are therefore able to read correctly Hebrew scrolls. Others still, who being seers have caught wonderful glimpses of the hidden secrets of nature. But all of these are specialists. One is a theoretical inventor, another a Hebrew, i.e. a sectarian Kabbalist, a third a Swedenborg of modern times, denying all and everything outside of his own particular science or religion. None of them can boast of having produced a universal or even a national benefit thereby, not even to himself. With the exception of a few healers, of that class which the Royal College of Physicians or Surgeons would call quacks, none have helped with their science humanity, nor even a number of men of the same community. Where are the Chaldeans of old, those who wrought marvellous cures, not by charms but by simples? Where is Apollonius of Tyana, who healed the sick and raised the dead under any climate and circumstance? We know some specialists of the former class in Europe, but none of the latter, except in Asia, where the secret of the yogi, to live in death, is still preserved.
Is the production of such healing adepts the aim of Theosophy?
Its aims are several, but the most important of all are those which are likely to lead to the relief of human suffering under any or every form, moral as well as physical. We believe the former to be far more important than the latter. Theosophy has to inculcate ethics, it has to purify the soul, if it would relieve the physical body, whose ailments, save cases of accidents, are all hereditary. It is not by studying occultism for selfish ends, for the gratification of one's personal ambition, pride or vanity, that one could ever reach the true goal, that of helping suffering mankind. Nor is it by studying one single branch of the esoteric philosophy that a man becomes an occultist, but by studying, if not mastering, them all.
Is help then to reach this most important aim given only to those who study the esoteric sciences?
Not at all. Every lay member is entitled to general instructions if he only wants it, but few are willing to become what is called working members, and most prefer to remain the drones of Theosophy. Let it be understood that private research is encouraged in the TS, provided it does not infringe the limit which separates the exoteric from the esoteric, the blind from the conscious magic.
Well, I think that needs a bit more exploration, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Yeah, so the main aim of Theosophy is this to help humanity. That was why it was brought into being. The Masters said they wanted a universal brotherhood, a brotherhood of humanity, a real universal fraternity started, and that's why it was brought into being. That's the whole purpose of the Theosophical Society, and that's why the first object is a universal brotherhood of humanity, regardless of race, creed, sex, caste, or colour. If you take that explains it all. You know, that's what we need in society, isn't it? And look at the way the world's gone, the way things are in Ukraine now, and the world wars. People just can't seem to get on with each other. And Theosophy said, you know, that was the Masters could see this at the end of the Victorian times. They knew what was coming, because they knew what was coming. They can predict what was coming, and that's why they said. That's why they started the Theosophical Society, to try and stop that. But people haven't taken up the teachings, so that's why all these terrible things happen. Because HBB, in one of her articles, said that if people follow the path of universal brotherhood, that we would have a golden age on Earth. But then she says, if not, humanity will enter such a period of history that it, you know, such an evil period of history that its counterpart has never been known. A sea of horror, that was it. It entered such a sea of horror that its parallel history has never recorded. And that's what's happened.
Yeah, well, I think because of, like, the Ephesians quote, you know, we have to be aware of dark dealings in high places.
Oh, yeah.
Spiritual wickedness and
That's right, yeah.
manipulation, which is rife.
That's what happens, yeah.
Nothing can be relied on as being as it appears.
Oh, no, definitely not. No. So
this business about separating the exoteric from the esoteric and the blind from the conscious magic, could you sort of expand on that a bit?
the blind from the conscious magic. It does not infringe the limit which separates the exoteric from the esoteric.
I'm not sure that I understand exoteric and esoteric.
Exoteric is the outer teachings.
So those are the more apparent?
Yeah, they're the outer teachings, like, you know, you have the lesser mysteries in ancient Greece.
But they're also saying be careful of the black letter Kabbalah, aren't they? The doctrine and black letter law. Don't read it literally.
Yeah, that's right.
As everybody reads the Bible literally.
Yeah, and the Quran.
It's all metaphor, yeah.
And the Quran. But I think what she's saying is that, you know, you've not to get them mixed up. Because they are separate. You've not to get the exoteric mixed up with the esoteric and try to promote the exoteric as being esoteric. Which some people do.
And there we have the blindness.
Yeah, and that's where the blindness comes from.
And the consciousness is the lived experience.
If you go to a lot of New Age places, they profess to be teaching esoteric stuff, but they're not. They're teaching very exoteric.
Mm.
But you're not to get the two mixed up. The exoteric is the outer teaching, the esoteric the inner teachings. Like you've got the lesser mysteries, which are the exoteric, and a lot of people went through that. The ordinary people went through the lesser mysteries in Greece and Rome and different places, Egypt. But the esoteric were for the ones who went further, for the initiates. He went onto a deeper level. That's the difference, exoteric and esoteric. And she's just warning against people getting, doing things promiscuously without true guidance.
Yeah.
And that's why these books are written, the theosophical books. But also they're universal. Another thing she's saying here is that a lot of people are specialists. They're caught up in their own particular way of thought, and they have a prejudice against other ways of thought. I mean, religions are the same, like Christianity. They believe that's the only real religion, and they get a prejudice against other religions. And
because they're chosen people.
Yeah, they think they're chosen ones. So do the Muslims.
But it's interesting on page 23 where it says a tree is known by its fruit, because that's biblical, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Know them by their fruit.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that, it needs a lot of... you need to look up the meanings of words as you go along.
Oh, yeah.
To fully understand it.
Yeah, you do, yeah. It's, I mean, this is a lot more simple than the secret doctrine, but it's still difficult in places, because it's Victorian, it's written in Victorian. If HP Blavatsky had been alive now, he should have written it different. They said the same, but should have put it in different language.
Yeah.
It's so you have to kind of... I think she says, I don't know, she said at the beginning, doesn't she, about it's for people who can drive themselves to think. Right at the beginning, in the preface. She says at the preface that it should succeed in making theosophy intelligible without mental effort on the part of the reader would be too much to expect. But it is hoped that the obscurity still left is of the thought, not of the language, is due to depth, not to confusion. To the mentally lazy or obtuse, theosophy must remain a riddle. For in the world mental as in the world spiritual, each man must progress by his own efforts.
But it's interesting that you're now putting it onto YouTube, because people just don't read as much.
They don't know, no.
On the tube, and usually you'd see everybody with a book in their hand. Now, in the carriage I was in, I had a book, someone opposite me had a book, everybody else was on their phones.
That's right, it's phones, yeah. I still prefer books. I mean, I've got too many books, actually, so that's the problem.
No such thing, Wayne.
No, but I still prefer a proper book.
They're interactive.
I don't like reading things on Kindle.
They're not good for you.
No, staring into worries all the time.
Shall we continue?
Yes, continue. The difference between theosophy and occultism, yeah. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. You speak of theosophy and occultism. Are they identical?
By no means. A man may be a very good theosophist, indeed, whether in or outside of the society, without being in any way an occultist. But no one can be a true occultist without being a real theosophist. Otherwise, he is simply a black magician, whether conscious or unconscious.
What do you mean?
Yeah. I have said already that a true theosophist must put in practice the loftiest moral ideal, must strive to realise his unity with the whole of humanity, and work ceaselessly for others. Now, if an occultist does not do all of this, he must act selfishly, for his own personal benefit, and if he has acquired more practical power than other ordinary men, he becomes forthwith a far more dangerous enemy to the world and those around him than the average mortal. This is clear.
Then is an occultist simply a man who possesses more power than other people?
Far more. If he is a practical and really learned occultist, and not only one in name. Occult sciences are not, as described in encyclopedias, those imaginary sciences of the Middle Ages which related to the supposed action or influence of occult qualities or supernatural powers as alchemy, magic, necromancy and astrology, for they are real, actual and very dangerous sciences. They teach the secret potency of things in nature, developing and cultivating the hidden powers latent in man, thus giving him tremendous advantages over more ignorant mortals. Hypnotism, now become so common and a subject of serious scientific inquiry, is a good instance in point. Hypnotic power has been discovered almost by accident, the way to it having been prepared by mesmerism, and now an able hypnotizer can do almost anything with it, from forcing a man unconsciously to himself to play the fool, to making him commit a crime, often by proxy, for the hypnotiser, and for the benefit of the latter. Is not this a terrible power if left in the hands of unscrupulous persons? And please to remember that this is only one of the minor branches of occultism. Yeah, so you have to have this, you have to have some kind of moral fibre before you study occultism. Otherwise, you use it for your own benefit, or even for, because black magicians have the same powers. They can use hypnotism, but they hypnotise people, for the evil means.
Yeah, for their personal advantage.
Yeah, because people have asked him, in one of our articles mentions hypnotism, about they tried an experiment on a girl, and they made her go to a solicitor and say that she'd done a murder, and confess that she'd done a murder. Now the solicitor was in on it, so he wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But she did it. She went and committed, under hypnotism, she went and confessed to doing a murder, which she hadn't done. So, it's this kind of thing that you have to guard against. So that's why it says you have to be a Theosophist, which is a person who lives a good life and has altruistic intentions and lives a moral life before you can go deeper into occultism. That's why she says you've got to be you can't be an occultist without being a Theosophist first.
Yeah, no one can be a true occultist without being a real Theosophist.
That's right, yeah. So that's what you have to be first. And then you can stop at being a Theosophist, but some people may want to go deeper and become occultists, but then that's very strict. It's a bit like becoming a monk or a nun, isn't it? You've got to, monks and nuns commit themselves to living a pure life. Not all of them do, but
Exactly.
but that's what they're supposed to do. But what she's saying is, if you become an occultist and you start to do things like that, the results will be terrible. The karma will be absolutely terrible, and it does happen. People do fall back from that path until you get to a very high level, and then you cannot fall back then. But until then, you're always in danger of falling back, being tempted, because you've got the Dugpas, the evil black magicians, who are always trying to influence us negatively, put negative thoughts in our head, make us. And they try and find your weak spot and work on that. So we have these. These are HPB talks about these. In Tibet, they used to magnetise things like rags or stones on the cliffs, so that when the Buddhist monks walked along these paths that had steep drops at the side, when they stood on this thing, they would get electric shock and fall off.
Ooh.
And that's one of the things the tricks they used to play. Well, they probably still do, maybe. Yeah. So we have to be careful that that we have the right moral fibre before moving onwards. And it's the same in everything, isn't it? In all religions, I suppose. If you look at Buddhism and Hinduism and Christianity, they all talk about becoming virtuous and compassionate.
But they're still people.
Yep. Well, I mean Christianity. How many people actually follow the teachings of Jesus? Sermon on the Mount, love your enemies, bless those that curse you, and all that. Not one in a million, or 1 in 1,000 follows that path. Might be the odd one. But generally, Christianity has always waged wars. Even though Jesus said, "Love your enemies." Islam's the same. Islam's always waged wars and tortured people to try and make them believe in Jesus and Allah.
God is love.
God is love, yeah. Like George Carlin said, that comedian. George Carlin?
Yeah.
He was saying that, that if you do such a thing, you go to hell, you rot in hell for eternity. At the bottom he says, "But I still love you." Yeah. Right.
But are not all these occult sciences, magic and sorcery, considered by the most cultured and learned people as relics of ancient ignorance and superstition?
Let me remind you that this remark of yours cuts both ways. The most cultured and learned among you regard also Christianity and every other religion as a relic of ignorance and superstition. People begin to believe now, at any rate, in hypnotism, and some even of the most cultured in Theosophy and phenomena. But who among them, except preachers and blind fanatics, will confess to a belief in biblical miracles? And this is where the point of difference comes in. There are very good and pure theosophists who may believe in the supernatural, divine miracles included, but no occultist will do so. For an occultist practices scientific theosophy based on accurate knowledge of nature's secret workings, but a theosophist practicing the powers called abnormal, minus the light of occultism, will simply tend towards a dangerous form of mediumship, because although holding to theosophy and its highest conceivable code of ethics, he practices it in the dark on sincere but blind faith. Anyone, theosophist or spiritualist, who attempts to cultivate one of the branches of occult science, e.g. hypnotism, mesmerism, or even the secrets of producing physical phenomena, etc., without the knowledge of the philosophical rationale of those powers, is like a rudderless boat launched on a stormy ocean. Yeah, because people do that. They try these things, but they have no understanding of what they're doing. It's particularly as regards magic. You get these books on magic, how to practice magic and all that. People just do it. They don't have any understanding of what can happen. The dangers on the path, etc. What can happen when they practice these things? They just want to do them. I remember when I was little, I used to read a lot.
To get a result, yeah.
Yeah, I used to read a lot of books on occultism, try magic. Well, we call occultism magic, and I used to try them with my friends and all that. It's like having Ouija boards and this kind of thing. You don't know what's going to happen, what results you're going to get from it. But people do it without having an understanding of what the consequences can be, and that's what Theosophy is trying to correct.
But just the use of the word practicing scientific theosophy, that word has been corrupted.
It has. Yeah.
So, maybe a different word would have been used by Blavatsky.
Yeah, at the time, yeah. What she's saying is that there's no such thing as miracle, because miracle believes it's supernatural, it's beyond the natural. But she said everything is part of nature. It's all because we're all developing nature's powers, hidden powers, that we don't know of yet. There's nothing that's unnatural, there's nothing that's supernatural. It's all part of one of nature's powers that we haven't yet discovered, and that we will discover as we progress onwards.
But some natural phenomena are discredited by governments or whatever, principalities and wickedness in high places.
That's right, yeah.
That are clearly existing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Right, so do you not believe in spiritualism?
This is the difference between Theosophy and Spiritualism, yeah. If by spiritualism you mean the explanation which spiritualists give of some abnormal phenomena, then decidedly we do not. They maintain that these manifestations are all produced by the spirits of departed mortals, generally their relatives, who return to earth, they say, to communicate with those they have loved, or to whom they are attached. We deny this point blank. We assert that the spirits of the dead cannot return to earth, save in rare and exceptional cases, of which I may speak later. Nor do they communicate with men except by entirely subjective means. That which does appear objectively is only the phantom of the ex-physical man. But in psychic, and so to say spiritualism, we do believe most decidedly. That's what I was saying, that it's not the actual spirit, it's the shell, we call it the shell, that's just a rotting, all the lower emotions and thoughts that are left behind, they rot away on the astral plane, and the real being has moved on to higher realms of being, we call Davidchan, which she talks about later on in the book quite a lot.
Yeah, so I imagined it as a sort of like a snake skin being shed.
Yeah, well, that's it, yeah. But she's saying you don't get it mixed up with the fact of spiritual being, meaning something that's at the highest, we live in a spiritual life. But they talk about spiritualism, which has nothing to do with the spirit. It's to do with like the lower aspects of the being, not to do with the true spirit.
I suppose we've got to sort out these semantics to understand the language, what's being said.
That's right, yeah.
So to continue, do you reject the phenomena also?
Assuredly not. Save cases of conscious fraud.
How do you account for them then?
In many ways, the causes of such manifestations are by no means so simple as the spiritualist would like to believe. Foremost of all, the Dersa Machina, excuse my pronunciation, of the so-called materializations is usually the astral body or double of the medium or someone present. This astral body is also the producer or operating force in the manifestations of slate writing, Davenport, like manifestations and so on.
Davenport, what's that?
Not a clue. It was something that was...
Is it that piece of furniture? No.
I don't know. I don't know what Davenport is. No.
So Deus ex machina is God out of the machine, isn't it?
Ah, yeah.
Or the ghost in the shell, I suppose.
Ah, the ghost in the shell, yeah.
I'm making notes anyway to sort of look. So
Yeah.
I can make a comment underneath the YouTube video.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so it says, the Enquirer says, you say usually, then what is it that produces the rest?
That depends on the nature of the manifestations. Sometimes the astral remains the karmalokic shells of the vanished personalities that were, at other times, elementals. Spirit is a word manifold and wide significance. I really do not know what spiritualists mean by the term, but what we understand them to claim is that the physical phenomena are produced by the reincarnating ego, the spiritual and immortal individuality. And this hypothesis we entirely reject. The conscious individuality of the disembodied cannot materialise, nor can it return from its own mental David-chanic sphere to the plane of terrestrial objectivity. So it's gone on beyond this world to David-chan, which is the land of the gods.
Okay.
We call it.
I was going to ask.
It's where we go between incarnations. It's a place of absolute bliss. There's no suffering, there's no pain, there's nothing. It's just absolute bliss. And it's supposed to be an average of 1,500 years that we're there as well.
How would you know if you've nothing to compare it to?
Well, yeah, there's no such thing as time, but I suppose the people who've recorded these things have made that generalisation. But it could be 40 years, it could be 5,000 years. That's just an average.
But then if it's a quantum environment, that would correlate.
Yeah. So she's saying what I've just said before about the shells. And the word spirit.
And the Kamalokic?
Kamalokic, that's the realm I was talking about, where the shell disintegrates. It means the place of desire.
Oh,
Karma
okay.
is desire.
Right.
Like, the Karma Sutra, things like that. Karma, desire.
Yeah.
It's a place of desire. It's the where our lower aspects just disintegrate.
Is that karma or karma?
Karma. See, really, you should say karma,
Mm.
not karma. I was told to say karma. That's Karma, karma, because karma is Kama.
Yes.
So it's karma. So
Right.
if you say them very similar, you can get mixed up.
Yeah.
So it's like I do tend to say karma usually. Karma, and that's an Indian couple that I saw at the weekend said that it's karma. You pronounce it karma.
Mm.
So but most people do say karma.
So that lady that used to come here, the Indian lady, is she still on this plane?
No.
Because she was handy to ask, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
What was her name?
Sona.
Sona.
Dr. Turai.
Mm.
Yeah,
She was lovely.
Yeah, she walked on a year or two back during the lockdown.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right. And the other guy went, didn't he? The tall, thin one that I used to live in Manchester.
Oh yeah, Derek.
Elderly, Derek.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Quite a few have really.
Mm.
Not many of us left. Only two of us.
We'll have to do better. Try harder. Enquirer. But many of the communications received from the spirits show not only intelligence, but a knowledge of facts not known to the medium, and sometimes even not consciously present to the mind of the investigator or any of those who compose the audience.
This does not necessarily prove that the intelligence and knowledge you speak of belong to spirits or emanate from disembodied souls. Somnambulists have been known to compose music and poetry and to solve mathematical problems while in their trance state without having ever learnt music or mathematics. Others answered intelligently to questions put to them, and even in several cases spoke languages which are such as Hebrew and Latin, of which they were entirely ignorant when awake. All this in a state of profound sleep. Do you then maintain that this was caused by spirits?
But how would you explain it?
We assert that the divine spark in man, being one and identical in its essence with the universal spirit, our spiritual self, is practically omniscient, but it cannot manifest its knowledge owing to the impediments of matter. Now, the more these impediments are removed, in other words, the more the physical body is paralysed as to its own independent activity and consciousness, as in deep sleep or deep trance, or again in illness, the more fully can the inner self manifest on this plane. This is our explanation of those truly wonderful phenomena of a higher order, in which undeniable intelligence and knowledge are exhibited. As to the lower order of manifestations, such as physical phenomena and the platitudes and common talk of the general spirit, which is what I was talking about earlier, to explain even the most important of the teachings, we hold upon the subject. The subject would take what more space and time than can be allotted to it at present. We have no desire to interfere with the beliefs of the spiritualists any more than with any other belief. The onus probandi must fall on the believers in spirit. And at the present moment, while still convinced that the highest sort of manifestations occur through the disembodied souls, their leaders and the most learned and intelligent among the spiritualists are the first to confess that not all the phenomena are produced by spirits. Gradually, they will come to recognise the whole truth. But meanwhile, we have no right nor desire to proselytise, that's how you pronounce it, them to our views. Proselytise them to our views. The less so, as in the case of purely psychic and spiritual manifestations, we believe in the intercommunication of the spirit of the living man with that of disembodied personalities. And she puts a note on. I think we'll end on this note as well for this half.
Are you going to read the note?
Yeah. We say that in such cases, it is not the spirits of the dead who descend on earth, but the spirits of the living that ascend to the purely spiritual souls. In truth, there is neither ascending nor descending, but a change of state or condition for the medium. The body of the latter becoming paralysed or entranced, the spiritual ego is free from its trammels and finds itself on the same plane of consciousness with the disembodied spirits. Hence, if there is any spiritual attraction between the two, they can communicate, as often occur in dreams. The difference between a mediumistic and non-sensitive nature is this. The liberated spirit of a medium has the opportunity and facility of influencing the passive organs of its entranced physical body to make them act, speak and write at its will. The ego can make it repeat echo-like and in the human language the thoughts and ideas of the disembodied entity as well as its own. But the non-receptive or non-sensitive organism of one who is very positive cannot be so influenced. Hence, although there is hardly a human being whose ego does not hold free intercourse during the sleep of his body with those whom it loved and lost, yet on account of the positiveness and non-receptivity of its physical envelope and brain, no recollection or a very dim dreamlike remembrance lingers in the memory of the person once awake. You know, I since my mum died, almost every week I've dreamt about mum and dad. I think that's where it is. You do go. It says they can't descend to you, but you can go up to them, to their level. Because when you sleep, you go into a higher level of being. Or you should do, unless you're unless you're non-sensitive. you're very, materialistic and non-sensitive. But a person who's pretty sensitive will rise up to even to David Chan and be with the people they love, or with, and commune with them. But when you come back to Earth, it will be distorted because your brain can't really process that information from a higher level.
Yeah,
it's beyond.
It's a different dimension.
It's beyond it's beyond the mind, beyond the ordinary mind.
You can enhance your dreaming with herbs.
Oh yeah, can you?
Yeah, I use herbs under my pillow because a couple of particular ones will give you more lucid dreams.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Just tell me about that. Yeah. Right. So I think we'll finish there because we've done long enough on that. So we'll have a break now. We'll have a break now before we go on to the voice of the silence.
Yeah.
So thanks for
being an audience.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody who's watching this.
That's just me and they.
See you later.